Che mamari nina. Chura la ba. Kopana, Dana, Tula ba.
An international fleet of science probes is congregating on Mars. They are scouring for evidence of past life. Testing technologies are required for humans to visit this lonely world. The Red Planet has beckoned eras of dreamers and spaceflight pioneers to visualize crossing the vast gulf between planets. Long-standing questions swing in the balance. What is humanity's destiny in space? Could we construct a second home on Mars? Mission planners have long understood that it is impossible to land on Mars. The atmosphere is thick enough to melt space capsules, which hit it running at 15,000 kilometers an hour. It is so thin that even a wide aeroshell plus a giant parachute is needed. Percy, the Mars 2020 Perseverance rover, used an ingenious system of rockets. Furthermore, an innovative sky crane to get the job done. Landing a team of astronauts is a difficulty waiting to be cracked. Percy is among the most sophisticated mobile machines ever constructed. Its minor affiliate, Ingenuity, is the ultimate drone, testing controlled aviation for the first time in another world. From the impressive images Percy and other probes send, it is easy to believe Mars is like the deserts of Earth. For at least a century, forecasters have imagined that it should not be too challenging to explore in person if we could get there, to pioneer a frontier of liberation and wealth. Furthermore, as Elon Musk puts it, to make a backup copy of Earth's biosphere in case of disaster. The actual Red Planet is an illusionist with a long history of tricking us. Colder than Antarctica, bone dry, intense, harmful grit underfoot, and killer radiation from persistent rain above. A miserable world. The Mars we desire has never been the Mars that is. For millennia, the bright amber planet has been teasing human fantasy. As they orbit, Earth and Mars come nearest every 780 days, dubbed a planetary opposition. It is the best time to monitor the Red Planet, which over a few weeks seems to slow down, backtrack, then speed forward again. Perplexed by this impulsive retrograde motion, Egyptian observers saw Mars as a hawk-headed humanoid god flying back and forth between the living and dead kingdoms. Sumerian astrologers considered Mars a quick, whimsical incendiary god from its odd motion. On May 5th, 357 BCE, the Greek philosopher Aristotle followed the half-moon passing in front of the Red Planet and recognized that Mars must be farther away than the Moon. He would have been astonished by how much Mars is 200 times more distant. Chemical rockets that take 3 days to get to the Moon would take 7 months to reach Mars. Future nuclear thermal rockets might cut that journey to less than 3 months. That is still a long time to spend contained in a small spacecraft. The minor planet may have been hit by something even more noteworthy. As you fly from south to north, Mars' terrain sinks, from red and orange highlands down to green and blue valleys. Mars's whole northern hemisphere is a giant concave ellipse draping over 40% of the planet. If this is a crash site, the incoming object would have been about the dimension of the dwarf planet Pluto. It would have transformed Mars, shutting off its internal dynamo, obliterating its protective magnetic field and destroying the chances for a life-sustaining atmosphere. When Elon Musk's would-be settlers set sail for Mars, they must accept that they will never again take a breath outside their helmets or habitats. They will have spent months crossing the void in a desolate world with a lethal environment. In October 1610, Galileo Galilei recorded the first telescopic observation of Mars. 26 years later, Francesco Fontana made the first known illustration of the planet, saying it looked like a black pill. The Dutch brothers Christian and Constantine Huygens had evolved much better optics by 1650. Christian sketched an irregular mark on Mars, living in the wetlands of Holland. He thought it looked like an enormous marsh, so it became known as the Grand Marsh Theaetas Major. Constantine found that the rotating feature finds the day length on Mars like Earth. 7 years later, Giovanni Domenico Cassini refined that figure to 24 hours plus 40 minutes, very close to what astrophysicists measure today. Cassini also logged the first observation of Mars's south polar cap. Watching the changing faces of Mars, Cassini imagined it must be pretty like Earth. 3 billion years ago, Mars may indeed have been Earth-like. Volcanoes build the atmosphere, steam and mist and flowing water, filling early seas with more fluid than the Arctic Ocean on Earth. In 1997, Sojourner, NASA's first Mars rover, found the outflow of a cataclysmic flood. Beginning in 2000 for the Mars exploration rovers, Spirit and Opportunity found stacked strata of rock laid down by flowing water over thousands of years. Furthermore, little rounded, iron-rich concretions nicknamed blueberries must have formed in silt pockets lying under salty water. But what of water on modern Mars? NASA's Phoenix found evidence in 2008 soft landing at high northern latitude. Its rocket plumes blew away surface dust, exposing some white material. Digging a shallow trench, the tiny probe revealed more, which disappeared within a day. Furthermore, liquid drops appeared on the lander's legs, then changed. In August 2012, the Mars Science Lab, Curiosity, rolled. Trekking through dry stream beds between the banks of ancient watercourses, and across the alluvial fan at the mouth of a long-dead river, Perseverance joined Curiosity in 2021, landing in a once-flooded crater, finding the clay-rich rocks of an ancient river delta. These hardy robot geologists found layered terrains, and each is built by episodes of flowing mud with dry times in between. These wet periods ended long ago. Today's Mars seems a lifeless desert, and a lonely landscape cries out for company. In 1699, Christian Huygens did not think Mars was so desolate. His last book, Cosmos Thoros, imagined that the worlds of the solar system must harbour plants and animals, though they would differ from those on Earth. Hogan saw no reason that life on the planets should not be intelligent. They led comparable lives. Furthermore, he also pointed out how important water would be to those creatures. The Moon is rich in aluminium, titanium, silicon, and magnesium. Asteroids add carbon, cobalt, platinum, molybdenum, and nickel. Mars has abundant iron and other metals, especially near its enormous volcanoes. Mars' key ingredient is water ice, split to make breathable oxygen and hydrogen fuel. Percy is testing this hypothesis, breathing in carbon dioxide and electrochemically breaking out the oxygen. The water beneath the surface, plus carbon dioxide from its atmosphere, can be rearranged to make methane and oxygen. Use that oxygen to burn the methane, and you can launch rockets. By making propellant on Mars, the cost of getting back to Earth drops by at least a factor of 5. To conjure up a space-based civilization, we can bring with us only tools and talent, small factories and power generators. We must hunt and gather the rest. In 1704, Giacomo Filippo Morandi guessed that dark rings around Mars' poles might be melt lines. Could the poles be ice caps? He wondered. 9 years later, Wilhelm Herschel declared yes. Mars' poles are water ice, and he thought that the broad, dark equatorial patches must be oceans. Herschel daydreamed about what it might be like to sail those waters. Mars lost its oceans before life emerged out of the seas on Earth. The northern desert lowlands, the flattest topography on any known planet, look like an ancient sea floor. The polar ocean may have covered a third of the planet, up to 4 kilometers from Mars. In 1786, Herschel speculated that Martians enjoyed a similar situation. He realized the Martian atmosphere must be fragile. The planet is enveloped in sparse carbon dioxide, and there is very little water in the air. There is methane, which could come from hot underground geology. The methane level sometimes blooms and then disappears. Furthermore, many experts wonder, might something be living below the surface? Bizarrely, Johann Schrader proposed Mars had no solid surface, just drifting clouds and misty rain in 1789. Schrader's shifting scene was just because of the unstable air of Earth above his giant telescope. The true story of Mars's atmosphere is becoming more apparent. Going back at least 1 billion years, intense ultraviolet radiation from the sun and the sputtering solar wind bombarded the minor planet with its low gravity and frail global magnetic field. Mars could not hold on to its protective gas envelope, and most of its air was lost to space, and the rest of its water was absorbed into the ground. Back in 1831, none of this dreadful history was known. Johann Heinrich Modeler and Wilhelm Bader crafted accurate Mars maps. They placed their zero longitude line through a feature that will later be named Sinus Meridian Bay. The Opportunity rover explored it for 13 years, sending home the stark, withered landscape images. It is easy to imagine standing on Mars yourself, gazing at the weathered rocks. Everywhere our probes look, they see evidence of past liquid water. Though there are no oceans today, there is plenty of hidden ice. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, MRO, recorded eroded cliff faces, exposing compacted frozen water over 100 meters thick in some places. MRO's radar revealed up to 2 kilometers of ice on passes over the poles. It has been laid down in layers, suggesting that Mars's climate may cycle between warm and relaxed times. Zooming in from orbit, we can see dark streaks that appear and disappear on the slopes of steeper craters. They look a lot like desert rain gullies on Earth. Furthermore, many researchers thought they might blow salty water. New analysis suggests that the larger ones, at least, are dry. Streams of rounded sand grains tumbling over one another and flowing like the liquid in the low gravity of Mars. The small ones seemed wet. In 1863, astronomer Camille Flannery picked up the idea of intelligent aliens, publishing the first of his 8 books about life on the planets. The Plurality of Inhabited Worlds became an all-time bestseller. Charles Darwin's notion that species develop in response to their environment led Florian to speculate that various planets would cause creatures unlike Earth. Drilling into the rocks, Mars rovers have shown the building blocks of life to be plentiful. Clay minerals would have filtered salts and harsh compounds from the primeval flowing waters. Many types of microbes now living on Earth almost indeed could have survived on ancient Mars. No photos, fossils, or direct chemical evidence of life have turned up. Around 1864, the Vatican became concerned about the state of grace of the Martians. Father Pietro Angelo Seici of the Roman College Observatory charted where they might live. He renamed Huygens Syrtis a prominent feature, calling it the Atlantic Canal. Sacchi intended no reference to intelligent design, but his term canali would cause much confusion over the following years. At the same time in England, astronomer William Moss made Mars maps of his doors that were near-sighted, but his charts were more detailed than before. Sensing a great story, science writer Richard Anthony Proctor blasted the doors maps out to the public. The Suez Canal was completed in October 1870, making news worldwide. The Panama Canal was in the planning stages, and many people connected the Strait Canal on Mars maps and these fabulous works of engineering on Earth. There are many ancient water channels all over Mars, but there is no technology in their shapes. Nathaniel Green, an artist by day and astronomer by night, painted the most accurate Mars chart. In America, the self-taught astronomer Asaph Hall noticed something no one else had: 2 tiny moons, Phobos and Deimos. Maybe bits of Mars flung into orbit by giant effects long ago. Or they may be asteroids captured by the planet's gravity, with Mars close within just 56 million kilometers of Earth. Giovanni Schiaparelli mapped it, though he, like Dies, was nearsighted and colorblind. Schiaparelli could somehow extract more from the telescope than others. He too called the lines he saw on Mars canali, giving them whimsical names from classical literature still used today. Some Mars oppositions are closer than others. While Earth's orbit around the Sun is circular, Mars' orbit is much more elliptical. During Mars' southern autumn and winter, the hemisphere is tipped away from the Sun, and the entire planet is farther away, making those seasons longer and colder, with a subsequent close opposition in 1879. Some Pirelli came to believe he was seeing pairs of straight canali. Harvard College observatories, William Henry Pickering, declared Martian canals were only visible because plants grew along their banks. All speculation about large engineering projects by smart Martians were put to rest on the night of July 14, 1965, as NASA's Mariner 4 flew by Mars in the probe's 21 images. Mars looked much more like the Moon than the Earth. Worse, Mariner could not find a protective magnetic field. Harsh solar wind and cosmic radiation would have scoured the planet for millennia. It is tough to imagine how even primitive life could survive here. In 1892, Camille Marion was still filling his imaginary Martian canals with water. He speculated they were the reflection of old rivers by the inhabitants for general water distribution, that the actual habitation of Mars, by being superior to our own, is very probable. Pouring more into flamboyance, illusory waterworks, Pickering asserted he had observed up to 40 lakes. At about the same time, a wealthy, world-traveling American diplomat felt he needed a career change and a personal passion project. Percival Lowell had read full Marion's books, and he made plans to look for Martians during the coming opposition of 1894. Pickering helped Lowell rig 2 telescopes on a hilltop in Flagstaff, Arizona. The new Lowell Observatory stared at Mars all summer long, but Lowell, an untrained observer, saw only what he believed. He sketched a planet-comprehensive irrigation system, transporting billions of gallons of melted polar snow to tropical oases, the irrigated agricultural projects of an advanced race. During the same opposition, astronomer Edward Barnard, wielding the California Lick Observatory's more giant refracting telescope, could not find a single straight line anywhere on Mars. Furthermore, when William Campbell examined Mars with a spectroscope, he saw not a trace of water. English astronomer Edward Maunder showed how straight lines on Mars could be optical illusions. Undeterred, Percival Lowell sprinted across America on a lecture tour in 1895, promoting his book, Simply Mars. A story-thirsty public bought his tales of Martian waterworks by the thousands. The real Mars is a parched planet, and though tilted rocks tell us, there were lakes here long ago. The Spirit rover caught one in the act. 486 Martian days after landing, today dust devils swirl across the barren terrain. Curtains of desiccated grit sweep up the hazy sky from rugged canyon cliffs. Dry, sandy landslides garnish steep crater walls and clump on the floors. In 1896, Percival Lowell began observing with an even bigger refractor, but could not see his glaring error. Lowell carried on for 20 more years, imagining over 450 canals, with vegetation seduced by the drama of a desperate civilization. They were combating climate difficulties as their dying world dried to a planetary desert. Mars's climate did change. It happened long before Lowell's time. Mars wobbles tens of degrees over hundreds of thousands of years, much more wildly than Earth. Without a large moon to stabilize it, when Mars points a pull toward the Sun, billions of tons of CO2 might be released, unleashing the ethics of greenhouse warming. This might melt subsurface ice, letting the water flow. The temper can never last. In his 1899 novel, The War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells found drama on the doomed planet. An advanced race of Martians comes to conquer Earth. Furthermore, enslave humans as work animals. Earth sent 2 Viking landers not to subjugate, but investigate in 1976. They found very active, intriguing surface chemistry, but no life. In 1985, the idea of a living Mars captured Lowell Observatory Carl Lapland. He claimed to have photographed 38 canals. It is vital to remember that most of these observers were good astrophysicists wielding the best telescopes of their day. They saw what was not there as a lesson, perhaps for those who dream of settling Mars today. In 1909, at the Maiden Observatory near Paris, astronomer Eugene Antonio could find no linear canals, yet the idea of an alien civilization had seduced the public. American novelist Edgar Rice Burroughs released the first of his 11-volume tale depicting heroic John Carter on a fictional Mars. Today's Mars rovers are finding a desert world too. Curiosity trekked around a wide field of dark dunes. Rolling like waves on an ocean, the sandy mounds migrate across the terrain. The orbiting high-rise camera caught Curiosity at work in what has been known as the Bagnoli Dune Sea. In 1921, Mount Wilson Observatory astrophysicists measured surface temperatures on Mars, finding them to swing from 15 Celsius at midday to a lethal minus 85 Celsius just before sunrise. Astronomer Walter Sidney Adams found only tiny quantities of oxygen and water at the Yerkes Observatory. Gerard Kuiper showed the Martian air to be all unbreathable carbon dioxide. Mars continued to entice explorers in 1949. Rocket pioneer Wernher von Braun wrote Project Mars. It was a sci-fi novel full of tactical engineering and a familiar plot. A multinational crew from Earth visits intelligent humanoid Martians trying to save their world. A year later, Ray Bradbury's Martian Chronicles placed a human colony on Mars to escape a nuclear war that devastated Earth. In 1952, von Braun published an enhanced Mars project, adding a comprehensive technical workup for an extensive scale space program. After 1,000 launches of people, propellants, and parts, a flotilla of 10 spaceships and 70 crew members would journey across the Gulf between planets to spend 444 days on Mars. Was the Mars project a rough draft for what would become NASA's Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo projects? In 1955, Paramount Pictures released Conquest of Space, modelled on von Braun's adventurous plans. To reach the Red Planet, engineers realized it might take more power than chemical rockets can produce in the US. Los Alamos National Lab Project rover began an effort to harness atomic vision to drive spaceships. The astronauts' crew capsule would be placed many meters from the radioactive engines. Getting to Mars faster would cut astronauts' dose of solar and cosmic radiation. Project Orion, a different approach to nuclear rockets, started in 1958. The idea of detonating nuclear bombs behind a ship to push it along. It was called pulsed plasma wave propulsion. Outrageous as it seems, this method could offer rapid transport to Mars and the rest of the solar system by 1961. The US nuclear rocket engine NERVA program had accumulated 17 hours of engine testing. In the Soviet Union, engineers were working on their nuclear thermal rockets. As late as 1962, the US Air Force made Mars maps with straight canal lines. Someday, a crewed expedition to Mars and return may become the mission assignment. To accomplish that assignment, Kraft Hierarchy, a visionary German-American engineer, introduced the idea of ganging together clusters of nuclear rockets. He thought his modular approach could bring Mars and Venus within reach as early as the 1970s. Furthermore, he identified the most efficient launch windows to reach these planets. Eric believed that human expansion throughout the solar system is a fundamental right. Furthermore, we are at our most dignified when we apply the laws of physics to elevate and protect our freedoms. In 1968, von Braun's visions would drive the Boeing company to propose the Integrated Crew Interplanetary Spacecraft concept. It bundled up to 5 nuclear thermal stages to propel astronauts and probes to the nearest planets. It would have cost half again as much as the Apollo moon program. It might have delivered the first crew to Mars by 1986. President Richard Nixon, fearing the political consequences of a catastrophic mission failure, would support only a space shuttle. Though subsequent US presidents would ask for various Mars programs, human space activities would remain confined to low Earth orbit for more than half a century. By 1990, some planners realized that bringing everything with you space programs were not workable To remedy this, engineers Robert Zubrin and David A. Baker proposed the Mars Direct concept. Its motto, travel light. Furthermore, live off the land. By making rocket fuel from the planet itself, explorers could ensure themselves a ride home. By 1993, critical ideas from Mars Direct had found their way into NASA's Mars Design Reference Mission. Consistent congressional support for humans to Mars never materialized. In recent years, giant aerospace companies and small private startups have all adopted bits of Mars Direct. Boeing's affordable Mars mission would send a solar electric sailing ship from low orbit. Astronauts would descend, protected by an inflated aeroshell, touching down like the Apollo missions, to find a landed habitat waiting. They would return to orbit like last century's moonwalkers for the long trip home. In contrast, Lockheed Martin proposes a Mars orbiting base camp. It is built by stacking pairs of modules, 2 tank farms, 2 habitats, 2 rocket propulsion units, redundancy for safety, far from Earth. Astronauts make sorties to the surface with a single-stage lander. This surface-to-orbit shuttlecraft does not depend on fuel made on Mars. Younger, more aggressive companies are thinking bigger. Elon Musk's space exploration company is developing Starship, and it has transported massive payloads and many people across Earth and orbit. Furthermore, bringing millions of tons of material to the surfaces of planets, moons, and asteroids. Like von Braun and Eric before him, Musk is focused on solving transportation around the solar system. SpaceX's eventual goal is to make Earth life multiplanetary and build a civilization on Mars. In not-so-friendly competition with SpaceX, Blue Origin, led by Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, is developing large boosters of its own. Blue Origin's vision is to extend civilization into space to preserve Earth's climate and maintain it as a flourishing biosphere by moving its heavy industry and power generation. Furthermore, constructing city-sized accessible flying habitats from materials already in space on the Moon, asteroids, and comets. Video game makers, too, promoted the adventure of populating Mars and the rest of the solar system. Furthermore, some visionaries foresee the eventual terraforming of Mars and warming it up and making it as Earth-like as possible. These world builders must find enough greenhouse gases to heat the planet, then replenish its thick atmosphere. Furthermore, restore its water as the vapor escapes to space. Still, more challenges lurk on the trickster planet. Mars's surface is everywhere loaded with toxic, caustic perchlorates, up to 1% of the sands, putting astronauts at high risk for thyroid problems and cancer. Other invisible dangers cascade from the sky, unhindered by the thin atmosphere, the constant rain of cosmic rays from interstellar space. Furthermore, energetic particles from solar flares are pelting the planet. Despite the many intriguing renderings of doomed cities on Mars, settlers will have to spend most of their time in roofed shelters for many generations to come, or underground. There may be hope. The rise of autonomous machines, advanced robotics, artificial intelligence, and augmented reality can extend human senses to the surface of the red planet. Furthermore, someday we may send devices to terraform Mars on their human emigres from Earth, building communities on a ready-made planet. Mars will come into a favorable position for launching human crews in 20 or 23. Mars has seduced many seeking notoriety, promising a new world to explore or exploit. Ingenious engineering may find elegant solutions for how to get us to Mars. What becomes of us once we get there? Do we visit the polar caps of Mars as we do on Earth? The northern polar cap and encircling dark dune field of Vastitas Borealis are visible at the globe's top. White water ice clouds envelop the most prominent volcano peaks, including Olympus Mons near the western limb, Alba Patera to its northeast, and the line of Tharsis volcanoes to the southeast. East of the Tharsis rise can be witnessed the enormous near-equatorial gash that marks the canyon system Valles Marineris.
Che mamari nina. Tura la ba. Kwa pana lana tula ba. Papa na, Yana, Jai Mama Yina.